back to Stakelbeck Tonight. From the Trump administration's new national security strategy to Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu traveling to D.C. later this month, to tensions brewing with Venezuela, the world stage is heating up as 2025 comes to a close. Here to break it down for us is our good friend Cliff May, president and founder of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington, D.C. Cliff, always great to see you. Hey, big takeaways from the national security strategy. I see obviously the call for accountability from Europe is one big one, of course. But how do you see this new strategy the Trump administration has put out, Cliff? And how does it differ from the previous administration?
Great to see you, Eric. One thing I would just point out is we call it a national security strategy. In a way, it's more a national prioritization strategy. Why do I say that? Because you don't tell your enemies exactly what your strategy is to defeat them or to keep them in, to contain them. You sort of want to let people in the various agencies and bureaucracies know what's important to you. In some ways, I would say it's the national security strategy in the first Trump administration, I thought was very, very good. I thought, more clearer on who our adversaries and enemies are than this one is. This one's a little cagey about that. And let me just be clear what I'm talking about. Beijing and Moscow have what they call, Putin and Xi Jinping, a no-limits partnership. And they are also in a partnership with Tehran and with Pyongyang, with North Korea. We call this, at my think tank, the axis of aggressors. They all have one thing in common, and that's that they want to diminish the U.S. Now, you can see in this national security strategy document that that's understood, but it's not stated quite so explicitly.
Wow. Interesting. And there's a big emphasis also, Cliff, on the Western Hemisphere. Obviously, tensions rising with Venezuela. What do you think of that renewed emphasis on our own backyard?
I think there's merit to it. Let me point out to you that we have in Latin America, which were in the southern half of the Western Hemisphere, we have three serious adversaries. Venezuela is one, Cuba is another, Nicaragua is another. And Venezuela also is tied in with this axis of aggressors. We call them part of the axis of enablers. Tehran, Russia in particular, are very close with the Maduro regime. And as the President Trump has made clear, this is an illegitimate regime. Maduro lost the last election. He has Cuban advisors with him there. It is also involved in narcotics trafficking. And this is another problem for Venezuela and other parts of Latin America, where the narco cartels are making common cause with terrorist groups, the leading one being Hezbollah from Lebanon. What do they have in common? Well, the narco cartels might say, can you help us with weapons? Can you help us with perhaps money laundering? What can we help you with? This is a dangerous situation that has been allowed to get kind of out of control. And I think prioritizing it is worthwhile, though I don't want to give up on the rest of the world where I think American leadership also is absolutely necessary.
Yeah, Cliff, well said. We cannot have Fortress America. And that brings us to the Middle East. You mentioned Iran, Hezbollah, their presence in our hemisphere. What do you think of the posture the administration is taking towards the world's most chaotic and strategic region, the Middle East, in this new document?
The document looks forward to something that I hope will come to pass, and that's a new security architecture for the Middle East to at least contain, I'd rather see them overthrow in some way, the rulers of Iran. Those rulers are outspokenly jihadi. They have been chanting since 1979, death to Israel and death to America. They are a threat to Israel. They say so. They're genocidal towards Israel. They're a threat towards Saudi Arabia, towards the United Arab Emirates, towards Bahrain. So a new security architecture, what would that mean? It would really mean Israel and Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates all being together as a force that doesn't need a lot of American help, some American help, but not a lot, and managing stability in the region, which and quiet in the region, if not just peace, which is what Israel wants and what the Saudis want, because the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia really wants to transform his nation into a very modern and important economic power and an important power in the Middle East. And again, he's threatened by Iran's rulers, who don't like the fact that Saudi Arabia is the custodian of Mecca and Medina, the most important religious sites within the world of Islam.
Yeah, we'll see if the Abraham Accords are back on the table in the very near future. Cliff, also in this document, the Trump administration turns up the heat on Europe over Europe's really abandonment in many ways of its civilization, the opening of its borders, the mass Muslim migration into the continent. What does the future of the U.S.-European relationship look like, in particular if Europe doesn't get the memo and change its trajectory?
Yes, it'll be a weakening relationship between the U.S. and Europe going forward if Europe doesn't change a lot of its policies. So long as Europe is focused inordinately on CO2 emissions and not understanding what it means to have so much migration from Islamic countries. And that at one point there was the hope that when Muslims came to Europe, they would be Europeanized as opposed to what may be happening, which is Europe becoming Islamicized. There have been warnings about this for years. Melanie Phillips, prominent columnist, British columnist, she wrote a book some years ago called Londonistan. There's real problems ahead for Europe. There is this problem, and I think what the thing is that for Trump to point it out is very bold, but he's saying you really have to deal with this. You really also have to do what's necessary to defend yourself, to defend your civilization, to defend your history, to defend your culture against Russia, against the Islamic world that wants to take you over. You do not want to be colonized while you are saying, aren't we terrible because once upon a time we had colonies ourselves. Europe is in not great shape, and it's mostly the trajectory. And one hopes this is a wake-up call. I know the Europeans are not happy about it, but friends need to tell the truth to friends.
Yeah, there's some harsh realities in there, and we are locked in a civilizational struggle. We need Europe in the fight. Cliff, as always, great breakdown, my friend. Folks, follow him on X, across social media. Check him out at fdd.org. Cliff, God bless. We'll see you again soon.